Donald Trump's unleashing of a new American economic revolution, led by the most comprehensive tariff policy in over 100 years, has put the empire of money on notice. Your rule is coming to an end. Our nation will now be guided not by money, which it is said is the root of all evil, but by those who want to produce and to build, baby, build. Contrast the panic gyrations of the money masters and the shrieks from the pundits and the free trade politicians to the grateful words of the auto workers who joined President Trump in the Rose Garden last week, or of the coal miners who joined him at the White House yesterday. Of course, at midnight last night, Trump's 104% tariffs against China went into effect, and China has retaliated with 84%. It is going to be wild. But Donald Trump has ice in his veins, and he is not going to be deterred from making the real United States great again. He truthed out this morning, "Be cool. Everything is going to work out well. The USA will be bigger and better than ever before." Trump is confident that he can work out an agreement with China, while trade delegations from other Asian countries like Japan and South Korea are already in or on their way to the United States, and discussions with scores of other countries are underway. Of course, the panicans are out in full force, declaring that the world as we have known it is over. This is Susan Kokinda, and in this April 9th update, I'm going to stress that, well, that world as we have known it is over. There is no doubt that Trump and team are committed to dismantling the globalist financier-run system, which has gutted the productive core of the United States over the last 5 days, has shrunk the number of decent-paying manufacturing jobs to a tiny fraction, and has put us on a path to economic, demographic, and political extinction. As Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and others have made clear in numerous interviews, this was unsustainable. There would have been a crisis no matter what. But this time we have a chance to come through it with a fundamentally restructured economy, one based on physical growth and increases in what our first Treasury Secretary Alexander Hamilton defined as the essential metric, increasing the productive powers of labor. What is also out in the open is the historic political realignment. The new Republican Party of Donald Trump, standing with workers and producers, up against Wall Street, the Democratic Party, the European oligarchy, and the Soros-funded crowds who held up their hands-off signs all over the United States last Saturday. While some foolish people thought they were demanding hands-off Social Security and Medicare, which are not being cut, the more deranged were demanding hands-off my reproductive organs, and in one case, hands off NATO. But the real message of the well-funded rallies was actually hands off the global financial system, because that is what Donald Trump is now in mortal combat with. Now, Donald Trump drilled down this change in a truth this morning, which contained an excerpt from the speech he gave to the National Republican Campaign Committee last night. "I'm proud to be the president for the workers, not the outsourcers. The president who stands up for Main Street, not Wall Street, who protects the middle class, not the political class, who defends America, not trade cheaters all over the world." For those who've been paying attention, this has been going on for a long time. In early 2023, as he launched his campaign, Donald Trump began unveiling a series of policies which he called Agenda 47, not, I might add, Project 2025, which the crazed Democrats used as a demonized straw man throughout the election. Many of the over 100 executive orders which Trump has signed in these first weeks could be found in outline in his various Agenda 47 proposals. Promethean Action stood almost alone in recognizing the significance of those policies. We wrote about them, we provided background material, we conducted Zoom discussions with MAGA activists around the country. If you want to be a leader in the economic revolution underway, I encourage you to subscribe to the free Promethean Action newsletter or become a contributor or sustaining member. Now, Agenda 47 became the basis for the unprecedented Republican Party platform, adopted at the Milwaukee Convention, which I was privileged to attend as a delegate representing the Detroit area in Michigan. And what Donald Trump said about the new Republican Party at the NRCC dinner last night was enshrined in the platform's dedication and introduction. Promethean PAC, our affiliated organization, recognized this, again, almost alone, and produced this half-page flyer, which was printed and distributed in tens of thousands of copies during the 2024 campaign, especially in key swing states like Michigan and Pennsylvania. So look at that dedication to the forgotten men and women of America. For those with a historical memory, that is an echo of Franklin Roosevelt. Read the pledge. The Republican Party must return to its roots as the party of industry, manufacturing, infrastructure, and workers. Look at the executive orders and presidential proclamations which are fulfilling that pledge. Yesterday, President Trump signed 4 executive orders unleashing the American coal industry from the death sentence imposed on it by the insane green ideology. He also addressed the need to stabilize our electric grid with stable, reliable energy, with, as he kept calling it, clean, beautiful coal. Several weeks ago, it was an executive order on strategic minerals and mining. Other EOs have addressed nuclear power, science and technology, logging, and all the sectors of the physical economy which have been devastated by 50 years of financialization. But of course, last week was Liberation Day, with the reassertion of American system tariffs as one of the most powerful weapons that can be unleashed against the central banker-run globalist financial system. This weekend, our historian Bob Ingram is going to conduct another really extraordinary class on the question of tariffs. So please go to the Promethean Action website and sign up to be in touch. Now, the reaction to Liberation Day and the following actions has, of course, been dominated by headlines since last Wednesday that warn that markets are crashing, threats of looming trade war, recession, depression, and of course, today, the writers of those headlines are on steroids. Given the extent of fear-mongering going on, I want to take a breath and look at the fundamentals here. Scott Bessent said it very clearly in his interview with Tucker Carlson last week. As a side note, as a student of Lyndon LaRouche's Science of Physical Economy, I never in my life thought I would be telling people to pay close attention to the speeches and interviews of a modern-day Treasury Secretary. But here we are. This is what Bessent said. And this is transformational for the American economy, for the American worker, and for the new Republican alignment. It's a combination of old and new ideas. Some of the old ideas were put away. I always tell everyone, and they don't want to hear it, the original tariff man was Alexander Hamilton, and he used tariffs to fund the new nation and to protect American industry. Throughout the interview, Bessent returns to the idea of 2 different economies. He said, "So I think that this is the beginning of a process. We're going to re-industrialize. We have gone to a highly financialized economy." Now, before I refer to other important sections of Bessent's interview, I want to share 2 images that I think are going to help you understand and navigate through what is going to be an admittedly turbulent and challenging time. In the 1990s, the political economist Lyndon LaRouche produced a diagram of what he called the triple curve. Its purpose was to give you a concept of what has been wrong with our economy for decades. It's what Bessent called a highly financialized economy. Now, in this image, these lines represent the rate of increase or decrease of 3 sectors of the U.S. economy. Let's start with the bottom one because that's the easiest. It's the rate of collapse of our physical economy over time, essentially over the last 50 years or so. Then look at the top 2 curves. The very top is the financialization, which Bessent speaks of, the rate of increase of purely financial assets of which the stock market is actually relatively minor. Most of this is exotic products, derivatives, CDOs, mortgage-backed securities, and innumerable things that only a supercomputer can understand. The next curve is the rate of increase of money supply, i.e. our friends at the Fed. Now, these two curves have a much greater rate of increase in recent years than what you're even seeing here, but this is a general concept. So the metastasizing of those two upper curves, financial and monetary, is what we've called wealth and growth over the past 50 years. It's kind of like cancer. And now that the Trump team is trying to remove the cancer without killing the patient, the cancer is screaming and fighting back. Now let's look at what a healthy economy should look like. The rate of increase of physical economic production, the things that allow you to eat, to have a house, to stay warm, to get from one place to another, to have modern conveniences and technologies, this is what should be growing faster than either the monetary or financial curves, as this second image shows. This is what the Trump team is intent on restoring. So let's go back to Besson's interview with Tucker. He goes on to describe the consequences of this highly financialized economy that we saw in the first chart. And he describes what is essentially two Americas. He points out that it's the top 10% of Americans who own 88% of equities at the stock market. The next 40% owns 12% of the stock market. So that adds up, as he says, clearly to 50%. The bottom 50% of Americans has debt. They have credit card bills. They rent their homes. They have auto loans. And we've got to give them some relief. Besson goes on to say, I was really struck by two different statistics. Last year, summer of 2024, Americans took more European vacations than they had in history. But in summer of 2024, more Americans were using food banks than they ever had in history. And speaking of that lower 50%, Besson said, and you know what? They don't want handouts. The Democrats have this strategy called compensate the loser. Well, first of all, the name of that strategy. I don't think the bottom 50% of Americans are losers. I think the system hasn't worked for them. I think they are winners. It's just a bad system, so we're going to fix the system. And that's it. Fix the system. And the controllers of the existing system don't want this to happen. This is what is at stake in this fight. This includes an important international economic component, which is being discussed under the concept of a possible Mar-a-Lago Accord. Promethean Action's Mike Steger has launched a YouTube channel, which will be discussing these developments in depth. And it obviously goes beyond economics. It involves a complete reordering of global strategic relations, which is what Trump and team have embarked on in their negotiations over Ukraine and Russia and the Mideast. Look at the fact that Trump sent Bibi Netanyahu away this week essentially empty-handed, as Trump announced direct talks with Iran, with Bibi in the room, who wanted to get a commitment from Trump to attack Iran. Is any of this going to be easy? Of course not. The global elite will continue to play geopolitics and to try and sabotage Trump's efforts every step of the way. And they seem to be engaged in a kind of après-moi le déluge approach to the markets today. But the truth is, we've been in a slow-motion decline for 50 years. What a world we're in, with a president who is intent on stopping that decline right now and is laying the basis for building our way out in the coming years ahead. This has been your midweek update. Thank you for listening.
Thanks for watching. Please take a moment and subscribe to our free newsletter at prometheanaction.com.